Well, here we go again. We now have a response from CD Projekt Red, but if you're not familiar with what's going on, earlier on today we discussed a massive report which came from Bloomberg, which provided insight into the development of Cyberpunk 2077, and it confirmed a lot of the suspicions that many of us already had, that the game just had unchecked ambition, poor planning, and many technical issues. There's a lot of comparisons and similarities that can be made to BioWare's Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, and CD Projekt Red unfortunately just did not learn from the past. Like, this industry never learns, it seems like. But what's becoming clear with Cyberpunk 2077's development is the fact that the executives, they just did not listen. They clearly wanted this game out the door as fast as possible, probably to move on to the Cyberpunk Live service. But the reality, CDPR is no different from some of the other companies within this industry, such as BioWare. Of course, it seems like the CDPR executives, whenever there was problems with Cyberpunk 2077, it was like, no, believe in the vision. We made The Witcher 3, it'll all be fine in the end. That's the same thing that happened with Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, in which BioWare's executives were like, no, don't worry, we made Dragon Age Inquisition, people love that game. People love Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect 1 and 2. And unfortunately, those games ended up being train wrecks, and obviously Cyberpunk 2077's quality is much different, but the point is the development, the issues that they ran into, very similar. But regardless, we did learn quite a bit from Bloomberg Jason Schreier's inside report on Cyberpunk 2077, such as the fact that the game really didn't start development until late 2016, and it seems like that E3 2018 gameplay demo, which was impressive and many believe that it was actually a large section of the game, it was supposedly mostly fake. But now we have an official response coming from the game director of Cyberpunk 2077, Adam Badowski. But there is a key detail that you have to remember about this ordeal, the fact that Jason Schreier did reach out. He gave them these questions, he gave them the bullet points, but they chose not to respond. But now we have a couple of responses to a couple of key points within this piece, but again, it's selective. They don't talk about everything, and even then, Adam Badowski's response, I really do not find it acceptable. I really do not like the responses here, and some of it I think it's straight up lies, but the big one he does address, he says, well, he brings up this point from the article, fans and journalists were wowed by Cyberpunk 2077's ambition and scale. What they didn't know was that the demo was almost entirely fake, and now here's Adam's response. It's hard for a trade show game demo not to be a test of vision or a vertical slice 2 years before the game ships, but that doesn't mean it's fake. Compare the demo with the game. Look at the dum-dum scene, or the car chase, or the many other things. What the people reading your article may not know is that the games are not made in a linear fashion and start looking like the final product only a few months before launch. If you look at that demo now, it's different, yes, but that's what the work in progress watermark is for. Our final game looks and plays way better than what the demo ever was. Well, I would say that there was a lot within that gameplay demo that is not here, but we'll get to that afterwards. Let's move on to the rest of this response. As for missing features, that's part of the creation process. Features come and go as we see if they work or not. Also, car ambushes exist in the final game, almost verbatim to what we showed in the demo. I think there is maybe one or two scenarios in which that car ambush happens, and it's not like the random encounter that we are all led to believe. Like, this is extremely misleading with how this is being characterized by Badowski. But he continues, he says, and if we get a bit more granular about our release, the vision we presented in this demo evolved into something that got multiple 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s on PC. From many renowned gaming outlets in the world, this just comes off as so cocky. I really hate this. What a terrible response to any of this. Look at the 10 out of 10s we got. This is as bad as some of the responses I've seen in the past from BioWare to the criticism that they received with Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda. This is just not a good response. I don't know why he thinks bringing up review scores makes up for a lot of the promises that they made for years about Cyberpunk 2077 that ultimately were not delivered at release. There's just countless examples that we could go over, and we're going to go over some of that with that 48-minute gameplay demo in a second. But anyway, let's continue with the rest of his response to this specific point. He says, as for the old-gen consoles, yes, that is another case, but we've owned up to that and are working super hard to eliminate bugs. On PC too, we know that's not a perfect version either. Well, you keep on bringing up those 10 out of 10s, and we are proud of Cyberpunk 2077 as a game and artistic vision. This all is not what I'd call disastrous. This was a disastrous rollout. Let's not ignore that. He's talking about the headline for this report, in which Jason Schreier rightfully declared Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous rollout. This was as disastrous as it gets. Your company lost about 40 to 50% of its fucking stock value because of just how badly this all went down. Your reputation is permanently tarnished because of the misleading statements and things that you've been saying for years. I just absolutely hate this characterization. But no, I want to get to this list of cut content from the 48-minute gameplay demo because there's countless examples we can go over. So a big shout out to Reddit user Mr. Stunt Action. This has been spread around throughout the community for the last number of weeks, but this is a breakdown of every single detail from the 2018 gameplay demo that was changed or cut from the game. We'll start with the far more expanded character creator. Again, it looked far different, and in my opinion, I still think it's a far better version than what was produced on day one. Non-lethal takedowns could be done without grabbing enemies. That's no longer possible in the game. Environmental takedowns, in which we saw one enemy have their head put underwater, you could see them getting shot. It was a nice way of silencing the enemy, that's just not possible in the main game. Reflex boosters are completely cut from the game. There's no choice to have Jackie grab Sandra Dorset. That was an option within that demo. There's no third-person cutscenes. That was said to be a creative decision. There are no one-night stands except for one with, I believe it's Meredith Stout, and that's it. Very misleading with how that was characterized. Cyberpunk will let you explore a variety of different interactions within the game world and its people. That is not at all possible. The world is very superficial. Johnny Silverhand died of old age in 2076. That's actually a very interesting detail that makes a lot of people believe that either the plot for this game was just not at all worked out at the time, or they just had a completely different vision for what Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2077's main story would be like. And there's further evidence throughout this 48-minute gameplay demo which makes people believe that maybe CDPR just didn't have any idea what they were putting together at the time. And now, since we know that this gameplay demo was mostly fake based on Jason Schreier's reporting, kind of makes a little bit more sense, since they were just kind of throwing things together, and the team, this wasn't an actual representation of what the game was. But anyway, as we continue, being able to change your apartment's environment, that's not really possible in the main game anymore. Weapons had different stats, recoil, spread, or range, that's not there anymore. No NPCs are driving around in motorized shopping carts. We were led to believe that we'd have some unique NPC animations and things going on. That's not really possible in the main game, where you don't see that. V's current apartment implied that there was going to be apartments, that you could buy properties. That's something that was cut from the game. We've known about that for a while. A big part of our RPG experience is having a world that's interactive. This game is not interactive at all. You can't even go up to a bar and get something to eat. You just have like a menu that pops up which you can trade items. It's not interactive at all. And for a game that's marketed as the next generation of open world gaming, that's very misleading, especially when you look at other AAA developers and their work, like Rockstar Games with Red Dead Redemption 2. The level of detail and the mastery of certain aspects like NPC interactions, at least for myself, that's what I consider the gold standard in terms of open world interactivity and immersion. But let's keep on going. This is a very minor one, but there were some NPC interactions, such as a punk that was perusing within a shop holding a samurai album in their hands. That's not at all in the game. Very minor one, but still. We've greatly enhanced our crowd and community systems to create the most believable city in any open world game to date. Leave that as what it is. NPCs have a full day and night cycle. I believe that the game's day and night cycle is somewhat broken, or it's not real. Dex doesn't actually have a heist frozen in the original 48-minute gameplay demo. See you at the afterlife was something that was said. V nonchalantly tells Dex they'll see each other at the afterlife. This is the first time they've met, so either the club wasn't exclusive to Big League Mercs V was already a part of, or more likely they hadn't thought this far ahead yet. Ripper docs are pretty much butchered. Obviously we had that really cool animation with Victor Vector. We do still have that in the main game, but it's limited to just that one encounter, which is extremely disappointing, and I think a lot of us believe that it was going to be far different. Loyalty discounts and humanity cost, that's completely cut from the game. The scavengers arriving in a van starting to shoot at us, that whole situation is completely different in the retail version of the game. As it said in the final game, the confrontation with the scavengers takes place right after rescuing Sandra Dorset. More importantly though, being able to shoot while driving was completely cut, instead being relegated to specific scripted events where you can shoot from the driver's seat. And then there was also said to be random encounters. This was supposed to be an example of a random encounter in which the scavengers were going to come and get payback for us. They were looking for revenge. And this was said not only to be a random encounter, but one used as an example of how your actions directly influence your open world experience. All of this could not be further from the truth, and I couldn't agree more with that point, because I was under the impression there was going to be a lot of emergent gameplay in Cyberpunk 2077. There just isn't, and I never got that impression from CD Projekt Red. They didn't properly tell me that, hey, this actually was just in this demo. There was no option to take Stout's bodyguard's gun. That was, again, an option that we had in that 48-minute gameplay demo. We could have gone into the Maelstrom headquarters guns blazing, not possible anymore. Flathead obviously was cut as a companion option. There was an inspection system for certain items, that was completely cut. There was alternative fire modes for weapons, again, that has been cut. How weapons were originally designed has been completely altered, like there was originally weapon modules, giving weapons the ability to ricochet bullets used to be made via an eye cyberware implant, unlike the final game where it depends on the type of weapon, power, tech, and smart. A targeting system for enemies in cover, another implant that would allow you to reveal enemies behind walls. In the final game, it's relegated to marking them with your scanner a la Far Cry. Jackie originally had some cyberware in which he could double jump. You could connect to an enemy's neural socket, it has been greatly simplified. Mantis Blade wall running obviously is another cut feature. And then this was said, so many options, so many possibilities, and each will have consequences rippling through the game world and your story. Again, that is just not the case with the retail version of Cyberpunk 2077. The world does not really react to your actions at all. I mean, you obviously have some dialogue, you have some radio stations that bring up what has happened, but that's about it. Now, specifically with this 48-minute gameplay demo and the contents that are actually in the retail version, like Trauma Team, we don't see them outside of that specific encounter again. That animation with Victor Vector in which we get some cyberware installed, we don't see that at all again. The car ambush, we don't really see that outside of that again, except for scripted moments. Like, there's just so much promises and so much stuff that was presented within that gameplay demo that was just inauthentic. And then we have Adam Badowski's response here to all of this, and it's like, no, you can compare the demo with the game, it looks far better. No, I mean, there's a lot of things that were promised that are just not here. Look, Adam Badowski can bring up that work in progress watermark all he wants, but there was just so many promises, even outside of this 48-minute gameplay demo, before and after, like the E3 2019 deep dive, that is not here. There's just so much complexity that feels like it was removed from the game, and it feels like it is in line with Jason Schreier's reporting. Just a lot of that gameplay demo just doesn't feel like it would translate at all to what Cyberpunk 2077 is today, because I think that CDPR was still putting things together back then, and the gameplay demo was just a bunch of ideas that were put together. And honestly, that is the case with a lot of vertical slices over the years. That's why so many people have gotten upset with games like Alien, Colonial Marines, Watch Dogs, Anthem. This is why a lot of it is expected differently with CD Projekt Red, but obviously that has not been the case. But I feel like I'm not actually giving my full thoughts on what I mean by this gameplay demo was clearly faked. I think the Mad Queen Show, another YouTuber, great Cyberpunk creator, actually put this into better perspective. She said the team lost a lot of time creating the mechanics and the programming behind the demo, as those mechanics were not implemented in the game, time they could have spent in the game itself. Also, the same programming couldn't be used for the game since it was specific for the demos, and it wasn't done thinking in the whole game, so it wasn't representative of how the game was going to work. The visual assets, music, and dialogue, though, belonged to the game, so on a superficial level, it looked like a slice of the game. Even though this is not unusual in the industry considering the state of the game, a lot of developers complained internally about losing too much time to make marketing happy instead of focusing on the game itself. And say what you want, but that 48-minute gameplay demo accomplished its goal. It got people extremely excited, and yes, marketing was extremely important with Cyberpunk 2077. But now, here in 2021, we just spent the last 5 or 6 minutes going over how it has changed and how much of it was cut. So definitely, I don't like the characterization that Adam Badowski portrays, that no, it actually looks a lot better. Yeah, some aspects, the graphics, it looks a lot better, but in other areas, not so much, especially with the complexity of the open world, which feels like it was cut, which goes in line with Jason Schreier's reporting. But another big key detail that he brings up is most of the staff knew and openly said it wouldn't be ready for release in 2020, and this is what Adam Badowski's official response to that is. You've talked with 20 people, some being ex-employees, only one of whom is not anonymous. I wouldn't call that most of the over 500 people staff openly said what you claim. I mean, the game clearly needed more time. You don't even need to speak with 20 developers to know this game needed at least months more for development of bug fixes and implementing basic features. Of course, I understand the circumstances, a pandemic's going on, but even then I would think that this game probably wouldn't have been ready until at least 2021, sometime during the year, if that hadn't happened, that whole pandemic ordeal that we're still going going through. I just don't get this response at all. Why Badowski is acting like this game is ready for release. Certain areas are extremely detailed, while vehicles, water, NPCs, and police lack basic AI. The open world, which was supposed to be super interactive, and our choices were supposed to impact Night City, isn't here. When you advertise a game as the next generation of open world immersive gaming, and on launch week you have compilations comparing more impressive Grand Theft Auto San Andreas physics and AI to Cyberpunk 2077, you have a problem, a big one. So developers claiming this game should have been ready by 2022 sounds about right. And then the final one is something that Jason Schreier actually agreed that he shouldn't have brought up. This is what he said on Twitter. He said that, "I do regret bringing up the language issue in his report since it's gotten a disproportionate amount of attention and it's not particularly a big deal. Worth noting, however, that Badowski doesn't address the brutal crunch and the unrealistic timeline. I'd be happy to interview him anytime." Like I said, these responses that he gave, very nitpicky and selective. He didn't actually address a lot of the other stuff that, again, what Jason Schreier just said there. But the last response he gives, he says, "A few non-Polish staffers shared stories about coworkers using Polish in front of them, which violated company rules, made them feel ostracized. They said," and then blah, 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 "were their coworkers talking crap about them?" And then Adam says, "Everyone here speaks English during meetings. Every company-wide email and announcement is in English. All that is mandatory. Rule of thumb is to switch to English when there's a person not speaking a given language in a casual conversation. It is, however, pretty normal for Germans speaking German, Poles speaking Polish, Spaniards speaking Spanish, etc. There are over 44 nationalities at the studio, you get the point, when there's no one else around. We're working in a multicultural environment. If the question is if it's hard to move to another country, sometimes cultures, and work and live there, then the answer is yes, but that's universal to every company all over the world, and we're doing what we can to ease that transition." And that is what Adam Badowski has answered so far about this Cyberpunk 2077 report. Again, though, it is quite telling and worth noting the things that Adam Badowski did not respond to, or he neglected to mention, such as Jason Schreier saying that top staff who had worked on The Witcher 3 had strong opinions on how Cyberpunk should be made, which clashed with Badowski and led to the eventual departure of several top developers. Does not at all talk about that. He doesn't talk about how more than a dozen workers said they felt pressured to put in extra hours by their managers or coworkers anyway, even after the promises that they made to Schreier in 2019. He doesn't at all mention the canceling of multiple features and scaling down the size of the game's metropolis. He doesn't at all mention how engineers realized that Cyberpunk was too complex of a game to run well on these 7-year-old consoles with its city full of bustling crowds and hulking buildings. They said management dismissed the concerns, however, citing their success in pulling off The Witcher 3. Doesn't at all mention that. He doesn't go over how at launch developers were exhausted and the game was in rough shape and everybody knew about that. There's just a lot of things within this that Adam Badowski does not at all want to talk about, which I just find that extremely interesting. But hey, maybe there is a much bigger response coming from CD Projekt Red in the future, although I'd say at this point it is looking somewhat unlikely. It is worth mentioning that Jason Schreier said that he sent these questions to CD Projekt Red, that he told them that this report was coming the day that they put out that apology video, so that may actually be the indirect response from CD Projekt Red to this report, in which they gave a commitment to quality, although people have taken issue with that response as well. There actually has been one change that was made to this page, and it's very interesting. It was one of the Q&A questions, or the frequently asked questions, and it was, "Didn't you test old-gen consoles to keep tabs on the experience?" The original answer was this: "We did. As it turned out, our testing did not show many of the issues you experienced while playing the game." And the new change is, "We did. As it turned out, our testing did not show many of the crashes you experienced while playing the game." So they changed that word from issues to crashes. Just interesting, very interesting. And I'm guessing they may have done this to not throw the blame as much on the QA department, because I think that's the insinuation that a lot of people had from the wording originally, but that's just one way of looking at it. So either way, Cyberpunk 2077 not in a great spot. CD Projekt Red, like I said, their reputation is permanently tarnished. I really am hopeful that they'll be able to turn this game around, but I'm extremely just disappointed and heartbroken with everything that has transpired the last month or so. This is just not the company that I was led to believe that they they were. They were supposed to lead by example, but unfortunately, they've done things that I honestly don't think I could have expected out of Electronic Arts or Bethesda or Activision Blizzard. Anyway, what do you make of Jason Schreier's report on Cyberpunk 2077's development and game director Adam Badowski's response, in which he only talked about a couple key points? But what do you make of it? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this. I'll see you later.